The IRS is the Internal Revenue Service. So their job is to collect revenue from individuals and businesses. What I try to tell people is like, look, this is a fixable problem. Everybody has problems. Some people have tax problems. Some people have medical problems, relationship problems, business problems. It can be fixed. You're not the only person, and there's nothing to be ashamed about it. As a business owner, you want to make sure you have a professional in your corner that's helping you. And if you do get into a situation, if you get a letter, if you end up owing them money, be proactive.
Hey everyone, it's Tamara Thompson with Broadcast Your Authority. We're back for another episode, and I'm super excited and grateful for this guest today, Jonathan Donenfeld, flew in all the way from New Jersey, right?
Yes.
I'm like, we're over here in Vegas, so that's a big jaunt. So thanks for joining us today. Jonathan's the president and founder of JLD Tax Resolution Group, and he started the business in 2015 and has helped thousands of individuals and businesses resolve their IRS issues. I'm sure there's plenty of people that need to listen to this video. He's also helped them save over millions of dollars in business. But my first question would be actually like, how did you actually get into tax resolution? Like, is it just one thing you woke up one day and you're like, I'm going to help people with their tax resolution?
I wish, but no, I'm a CPA, and I had worked at several, large accounting and consulting firms, and realized that I wasn't the best employee, and decided to start my own CPA firm with the goal of helping individuals with tax and accounting, things like that. And I started, and it was a grind, like most businesses, but it was
Rewarding in a way?
It was, but not, I didn't have the full passion for it. And really one day what happened was an individual came into my office. He was an electrician, and he said he owed the IRS $200,000, and
Wow.
he wanted to see if he qualified for an offer in compromise. And we ended up doing an offer in compromise for him and settling his tax debt for about $25,000. And never before had I had a client so happy. He literally came into my office and hugged me, and he said, this has changed my life. Now him and his wife could, have a joint bank account. They could save up to buy a house. And it was just, I realized from that moment, like, I really want to focus on this.
On helping people.
Exactly. Helping.
On the side, when you said offer and compromise, like, I know what it is, but if someone was out there and they're like, I'm not even sure what that is, like, can you explain a little bit about how you helped him with that and what that is?
Sure. So the IRS has a few different options to potentially settle your tax debt. So one of them, probably the most known, is called the offer and compromise. And you have to basically show the IRS that you're unable to pay them back in full in a certain amount of time. And they look at your income, your assets and liabilities, and then your monthly expenses. And it can be a very long problem, and it's not an easy process. But if you do qualify, it can be amazing for you. It can be life-changing. So, if you have tax debt, people that have tax debt really need to see what options are out there. And there's not just the offer and compromise, there's a few other things. So, it shouldn't be something that holds you back. Your IRS problem shouldn't be the reason that you're not able to sleep at night, that you don't feel good about yourself. There are solutions.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Right. So when you say can't sleep at night, people really don't understand how having an issue with the Internal Revenue Service affects you mentally. Talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. So, I say it like this. People don't really have a tax issue. They have this like burden on them.
Yeah.
People will come to our office and they're so embarrassed that they owe the IRS money, and they haven't told their wife or their girlfriend or boyfriend. They haven't told their family. They're afraid that they can't travel. They're worried the IRS is going to show up at their door. It's just they can't sleep at night. And what I try to tell people is like, look, this is a fixable problem. Everybody has problems. Some people have tax problems, some people have medical problems, relationship problems, business problems. It can be fixed. You're not the only person, and there's nothing to be ashamed about it. As you know, I'm a business owner, and I know running a business is hard. You have a lot of things to do. You wear so many hats, and whether it's, it's easy to miss a filing. Let's say you forget to do something, you get bad advice, or a lot of people, it's they go through a bad divorce, a death in the family, a medical issue, or a bad investment, something that these things happen to people every day, and that can sometimes cause people to fall behind on their taxes. There's no need to be ashamed about it, but it's really important that you resolve it so that you can move forward with your life to feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
As business owners, I mean, obviously, IRS is the world's largest tax collection agency, basically, right? Like, what would you say to? What would you actually tell business owners, like how they can protect themselves there in this to set themselves up for future success?
Sure. So, it's true. The IRS is the Internal Revenue Service. So their job is to collect revenue from individuals and businesses. And they're the primary source of, they're the primary revenue collectors for our country that pay for things. So, as whatever people want to say, that's their job. So if the IRS thinks you owe them money, they have the power to levy your bank account, garnish your wages, put a lien on your house, and do a lot of, not nice things that can be disruptive. So I always say this, as a business owner, you want to make sure you have a professional in your corner that's helping you. And if you do get into a situation, if you get a letter, if you end up owing them money, be proactive. Okay. So that is, I think, where the most problems happen. Someone misses one filing or something goes wrong and they can't pay something, and they kind of hide, and they think that it's just going away, but it gets worse because problems with the IRS, interest continues to accrue, penalties continue. So it snowballs, and all of a sudden people aren't sure what do they do the next quarter with their payroll returns or the next year with their filings. And all of a sudden this problem's much bigger and they don't know how to deal with it. So be proactive when you have a problem, you know, look to resolve it. There are solutions, and just don't let it continue. And because one day you could wind up with a bank levy, you could wind up with the wage garnishment. And, you know, a lot of times people come to our office, maybe we spoke to them and they weren't sure if they wanted to get started. And then they're like, hey, I'm ready to start today. The IRS just levied my bank account. It's
Yeah.
a much worse situation. So you want to be as proactive as possible.
When you're first starting out, like you said, as a business owner, you have to wear a lot of hats. And there is a learning curve to understanding tax. And I mean, when we first started out, we didn't know what we were doing and we didn't pay taxes for a whole year. And then we had to pay double tax the next year to catch up, right? Are there things that you do to help people learn about taxes or to lower that learning curve?
So your experience is the business owner experience that we see all the time. I mean, I own several businesses, and I think I have like 50 something filings throughout the year if you add up all the tax filings between payroll, federal, state, local, etc. So it's a lot. What I tell clients when they come to us with a problem, the first thing we want to do is we want to, stop the bleeding. Okay. We want
Right.
to, whatever the issue is, you need to file something, get a hold with the IRS. Okay. Then we want to work out a resolution. Okay. Whether you qualify for an offer and compromise, a partial pay agreement, CNC, penalty abatement. There's a variety of options. So figure out what's best. And then we want to plan for the future so that this doesn't happen, that you're paying your taxes on a timely basis, okay? And you're maximizing your deductions, you're doing tax planning. But a lot of people, you can't get to that point until you kind of clean up the mess behind you. So it's really, stop the bleeding, resolve the issues, and then plan for the future.
You can help with tax issues as well as tax strategy, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I always say people that come to us, they're like, well, I want to do this. I want to do that. First, we got to get things cleaned up. And that's the most important thing, because I don't want you to wake up tomorrow with your bank account being levied. And, once you're in an agreement with the IRS, then we can start working on the tax planning. And as a business owner, there usually are some strategies that can help you, make sure that you're paying the least amount of taxes. You work hard for your money, and it's not, I don't know, I don't think it's a goal to give the government as much money as possible. You want to give them, to me, the least amount possible. So that's the way I look at it.
Speaking of giving them the $80 billion, the IRS just received over $80 billion. I think it's important for you to let the listeners know what's going on with this money. Where is it going? What's about to happen?
It's a great point. And, people have seen the headlines. So the IRS has finally, after years, got this huge increase of funding, okay? Because they've have terrible technology, and they realize that there's a lot of people that are delinquent on their taxes, behind. And so they're using this money to try to collect more money. They're very open about it.
Are they using AI?
Yeah. They are.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. Yeah, they actually are. And it's interesting. So, where the money is going. So they're using technology to focus more on people they think that they can get more money from. And who do they think they can get more money from? Business owners.
Yep.
Okay. So they're doing more business audits. They're hiring more revenue officers, more tax counsel, so people that can pursue criminal cases. They're going after, partnerships. In the past, the easy, low-hanging fruit for them was, more at the low income level, people with, trying to claim extra children. And and they realize that, that's not a very profitable thing for them. So they're going after the people that prepare those returns. And then they're focused on business owners. We've seen a lot of audits of recently doctors, lawyers, contractors. We've seen increased in going after people that have unfiled returns. So believe it or not, there's a lot of people that don't always file their returns for different reasons. And the IRS has gotten a lot smarter, I think, through technology at figuring like, hey, this person has a job or owns a business and we don't have returns on file for them. You'd think they would have done this earlier, but they're catching up. And so, yeah, and they're judging how they use the money by how much they collect. So that's the big thing to remember, that, they have a mandate to bring in more money.
So what happens though? What do they do if they find out they're being audited? What's a business owner to do next?
So if you get a letter from the IRS, so there's a few different types of audits. There's small business, there's correspondence, larger audits. Usually, the ones we deal with are small businesses, are like $15 million and under, or $10 million and under in assets and income. And what happens is, first they'll want to meet, they'll want to learn more about your business, and then they'll ask for your records. So again, this is really important. They're using this meeting with you as a business owner to figure out if you're not doing things right, and to try to see how they can collect more money from you. So a problem that we see is a lot of people get this letter and like, oh, I'll talk to them. I can do what I do. But they're taking the information you give them to figure out how they can collect more money from you. And
they're using it against you.
Exactly. They're not your friend. The IRS auditor is not your friend. Like we have this conversation all the time. Like, oh, the auditor was a nice guy and I, spoke to him. I'm like, no, he is not. He trying to help you. He has a job. I'm not saying he's a bad person or she's a bad person. They have a job to do, and it's to figure out if they can collect more money from you. So they're like, you have to look at them like a debt collector, which is what they
Yeah.
are. The other issue, and how we just had an audit recently where we had a business owner that it was a doctor that had a lot of expenses that he did not have proof for, and they weren't real expenses. And, the potential, penalties were in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so some people take the approach, well, I'm going to try to, I don't want to say try to show them that they have proof for a small percentage. And we said, we're going to come clean and focus on getting these penalties removed. So, we were able to save our client, over $100,000 in penalties because of the approach we took. Whereas, we came clean right away and went to the auditor and said, this is what they owe, and we'll agree to this if you agree to waive the penalties. Whereas other people sometimes, try to fight things that they're not going to win, and they try to fight for a small amount, and then they get stuck with these large penalties.
Are there any scenarios where you really can't help somebody?
So the scenarios where I can't help people is sometimes people say, I owe the IRS $100,000 and I only want to pay them $1,000. And I'm like, well, it doesn't work that way. Okay. So what I tell people is if you have an outstanding tax debt with the liability, there is a resolution, whether it's a settlement, a payment plan, etc. It's what you qualify for. If you're already in a settlement, if you're already in a payment plan and you want to see, do you qualify for a settlement? You may not. So there's sometimes we tell people, hey, we can't help you. There's nothing more to do for your situation. Another problem is we can't help you if you don't help yourself. So, some people, sometimes we start with clients and say, okay, well, you have to change your spending habits. That's an issue we see a lot where, I see this a lot with real estate brokers where, let's say they're getting $100,000 or $200,000 of income, but they're not paying any taxes. So they're living like they make $400,000. They have a fancy car and fancy, high expenses, and say, look, you're living on what I call, pre-tax income. You need to learn to live on post-tax income and start paying taxes. And some people don't want to, and they have to kind of bang their head a couple times before they realize that. And a lot of times people are like, oh, but my expenses are so high. And sometimes you have to make real life decisions. I wish I could not pay taxes and spend my money on more trips to Vegas, etc. But it doesn't always work that way.
So what does it look like when you come in to help somebody? Like how does that work?
So usually people are coming to me in some type of distress situation. They owe the IRS. There's an agent assigned to the case, or they're kind of not sure what to do. They're in a panic, or they're just frozen. So, the first thing we do is we investigate what is the full extent of the problem, what needs to be filed, how much they owe. A lot of times people don't know everything. They're not sure. And, get a collection hold. That's really important. We want to make sure that they're not, having their bank account levied so they can pay their bills. And then, come up with the resolution, whether it's a payment plan, offer and compromise, a partial pay agreement. We do a lot of partial pay agreements that save people millions of dollars. So it's coming in, putting a stop to the bleeding and resolving it. So it's usually people are in a jam. They're in a difficult situation, and it's figuring out how to fix it.
For like the business owners that are behind on taxes, which obviously I'm sure a lot of people come to because they're behind on taxes, is there just a lot of different scenarios like that occur with that? I'm just curious because obviously that's just one thing. You're behind on taxes, but I'm sure there's just different scenarios that play into that part.
So what happens is if you're a business owner and you're behind on taxes, you have to stop the cycle, because what happens is you fall behind on one quarter and then you're trying to pay it, you miss the next quarter, or you don't pay this year. So
you
Or
catch up
a
the
year.
second year.
Right, exactly. Right. So a lot of times people are unable to do that because of, they don't plan properly or they didn't save enough. So, I obviously each situation is unique, but I would say it's really, figuring out for them what is the best way to resolve their problem for the least amount of money. Okay.
Have you seen a lot of people come in and after you talk to them, they actually are able to change their mindset about like wanting to pay their taxes or be on time with taxes? Because I've had conversations with people that are just like, oh, some people are like, have to pay the taxes on time, have to pay in full, have to. Then I have other people that are like, oh, we do like installments. And then other people just, they don't. So I'm just always like, I'm sure you come across these different personalities and mindsets of that. Do you help them overcome that?
Absolutely. I would say people with tax problems tend to be more on the procrastinator side. Um, but usually having the IRS kind of crawl into your life can be that shock that you need to change your ways. Not always, but I love, people. A lot of times after literally our first meeting, our first phone call, you can feel the relief just by unburdening the problem to us and realizing that there's a solution and explaining that there's other people, that this happens regularly. We see all of a sudden like a relief from them just from having the conversation. And then, getting them to change habits. It takes time. It doesn't always happen right away, but it's definitely doable. And one of the biggest mistakes that business owners with back tax problems make, so they try to pay the back taxes, but they don't pay their current taxes. So for example, like we just had a situation where I was talking to a client yesterday and he owes about $150,000. He's an engineer. And he says, I'm going to take out a loan and I'm going to pay my old taxes that we owe. So we don't have to set up a payment plan. And I said, well, in 2 months, you're going to have to pay your taxes for next year. And if you don't, do you have the money to pay that? No. If you don't pay that, you're going to get a 25% penalty potentially. Okay. So what we worked out a strategy is he's going to use the money to pay his taxes, the current taxes, which is more important, and then set up a payment plan for the back taxes. Okay. So that's the type of, planning that you need to do. I mean, 25%, that's could be, for this person in this case, it's like probably $10,000 to $15,000 that he's saving. And now the problem won't continue because if he misses this, all of a sudden he owes more money, interest accrues. So we got to stop that cycle.
So
It sounds like that is one of the reasons why business owners that try to do their own bookkeeping, they need to let a professional handle it. The information you just gave us, you won't know that unless you're in this business. That's one of the best strategies.
And we see this all the time. And it's so sad because you see people take money that they have and literally by sending it to one place versus the other can cost them, tens of thousands of dollars. So, hiring a professional, if you have a business, I mean, you really need to do it. That means you're committed, right? Like,
Right.
Are you a business or are you just a person that does a job or a trade? If you're a business, you have professionals that help you and guide you. It's okay not to know everything. It's okay. And, you have to spend money sometimes to, spend money to make money and also spend money to protect yourself.
Is there a formula or a strategy for an offer and compromise?
So, everybody thinks that there's a magic formula to get an offer and compromise. Okay. So you have to prove it's a public formula that everyone can know. Basically, you have to prove to the IRS that based off your assets and liabilities, income and expenses, you can't pay them back within a certain amount of time frame. And that time frame is determined on your tax debt. Okay. Now, the gray area is what expenses are allowed. So the IRS has a list of expenses that you're allowed to use for this, which are different than your regular tax expenses. And that's another story. But So, are you able to deduct tuition? You may or may not. Are you able to deduct, certain medical expenses? If your housing expense is a certain amount over the standard, does it qualify? So there's a gray area, and that's where there's certain planning that can be done sometimes to make someone qualify. I mean, we had someone once where he had cash, he had money, so his assets were high, but he had been talking about how he needed to get his teeth done. He needed to get implants. So he said, well, if you take that money and use your implants, those are allowable deductions. So he used that, and that helped him qualify for an offer and compromise and save over $300,000 that we did for him. But what I would want to add is most people don't qualify for an offer and compromise. What we do a lot of, there's something called a partial pay agreement with the IRS, which I call the backdoor offer and compromise. It's a lot easier to get into. It has maybe a longer payment time frame, but it depends. But a lot of people are very focused on the offer and compromise. If you apply for the offer and compromise and you get rejected, one, it extends the IRS collection statute. So you don't want to apply if you're not going to be successful. And two, you usually have to put down a deposit. It can cost money. So, I mean, we only apply for offer and compromises if we're certain they're going to go through. Like our acceptance rate is, I don't know, 98%, something crazy, because
Wow.
we make sure that the person is certain that they're going to do it, that they're going to qualify. A lot of people, aren't good candidates. Even people that would qualify, the process to do an offer and compromise normally takes about a year to 2 years. During that time, you have to stay in compliance, make your estimated payments, do all of those things. So if a person is struggling with that, then they're not going to qualify as well. We've had cases where someone qualified, the IRS accepted it, and then they weren't able to pay their estimated taxes. So it was all for nothing. So, you really have to meet all the requirements and be able to do that for the next year to 2 years.
Explain what a collection statute is and how it can affect a person negatively that's trying to do an offer and compromise.
So that's a great point. And this is, again, unfortunately in our industry, there's a lot of people that don't have the experience. There's a lot of people that try to sell these. It's easy to sell an offer and compromise because you can, if I tell you owe $100,000 and I'm going to settle it for 10 cents on the dollar, you're like, sign me up, right? So a lot of people make promises that they can't keep. And one of the reasons and one of the issues is the IRS has something called the collection statute. Okay. So they have a certain amount of time to collect on a tax debt. Now, certain things you do can extend it. Filing an offer and compromise can extend the collection statute. So unless you're certain that you're going to qualify, you don't want to do it. We've seen cases where people went to some of these like national firms that you hear on the radio, and they applied for offer and compromises. They didn't qualify. They extended the statute. The tax debt would have expired already. It's another thing is if you have older tax debt, the first thing you always need to do is if you owe older tax debt is you need to get, we call it like our investigation where we determine the CSEDs, because then that's going to determine what we do. So when is the tax debt going to expire? And believe it or not, we've helped people have millions of dollars of tax debt expire, and sometimes doing less is more in those cases. So it's really important to know the CSED.
Wow. No, that's incredible. I mean, it's great to, like you said, it's important to hire the expert. Like we're all experts in our own fields. And I mean, this proves just our conversation today. And I appreciate you, Jonathan, for joining us. And can you let people know where they can find you if this resonated with them and they want to connect with you? How would they best connect with you and your team?
Sure. So, you can go to our website at 201tax.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. People find us on TikTok, JLD Tax.
I've seen some viral content on there.
Taxes. Listen, taxes. I tell people it's very rare that there's a news story that doesn't involve taxes. So
Yeah.
taxes affects you coming and going. The government always wants their piece.
Yeah.
Especially first quarter, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you today. And those of you that are watching this video, be sure to subscribe, like, comment, connect with Jonathan and his team, and I'll see you in the next episode.